Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Cheaper Than Therapy. So, we have a coaching session for you guys today. And Michelle wrote to us talking about some struggles with her husband and just relationally, right? It sounds like husband has had some mental health struggles for the past few years. And it's really kind of come to a head within the family dynamic. You've got two older kids from a previous marriage. And understandably, it's affecting them, it's affecting you, it's affecting the whole kind of family dynamic. It
Yes.
sounds like you yourself have been doing therapy. Y'all tried couples, um, in different kind of forms and stages of success or not. And it feels a little bit like, are you kind of just like stuck? Like, where do I go
Stuck,
from here?
totally stuck. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so
Mm,
the
okay.
main thing that
Okay.
keeps coming up as my kids have gotten older. So we've been together a long time. My kids were about 5 and 6 when we got together. And so there's a
Okay.
long history there. There's a lot of love. We
Hmm.
operate very much like sort of one family unit. We own a home. The kids are with me and my husband. Primarily, they see their dad on a fairly regular schedule. It's a pretty kind of like average vanilla life. Like we go on vacation, we do
Hmm.
normal family things. My kids are involved in sports. But lately, as they've gotten a little bit older and my husband's mental health issues have escalated a bit, we're coming to a head on some things that have to do with, to me, kind of highlighting some real sort of like core value differences between the two of us that I'm feeling really
Mm,
stuck with.
mm,
And a lot of those have to do with what is the role of a step parent? I guess my question, like, what is the role of a step parent who's got a long history? This is not like a new step parent coming in, who's got a long history with these kids in parenting decisions that consistently cause conflict. So it's almost as if like
mm,
every parenting decision when they were 5 and 6 was so easy. Like, do you need to eat broccoli for dinner or not? Big kids, big problems. Now it's, my daughter wants to have her boyfriend come over to the house and hang out in the bedroom. And that's
mhm,
sort of the main thing at the moment. And that was a really big no for me for a long time. And now I'm starting to sort of think, it's kind of we're still home, the door's open. It's, not that much different than being
mm.
upstairs in the living room alone. And anytime I try to bring up these issues, and this has been a consistent pattern, things are really just shut down. And I've
Mm,
tended to kind of give up when it pertained to just me. And I'm feeling less inclined to give up my fight on this when it comes to my
mm,
kids. And I guess I'm just
mhm,
not, I'm feeling like, 80% of the time it's fine. Like everything's fine. But the second there's an ounce of sort of disagreement or fundamental belief in terms of these parenting values, it turns into, lots of criticism, lots of stonewalling, lots of uh, kind of negativity towards the kids, snippiness, really short fused. And this can last anywhere from a day, a week, month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on the cycle of things.
mm,
And so I never quite know what's going to set it off. And
mm.
I'm still having a hard time just letting it go. The stakes seem
Mhm.
higher now.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. Big breath, mama. I feel like I would imagine Vanessa and I both felt it in our bodies when you were speaking to the things that we can maybe let slide or like, make peace with in general. But then when it comes to our kids, it becomes a very different
Yeah.
response
Animal.
conversation. Yeah, and
Mhm.
I think it's tough, I'll be honest, because it isn't just that clear of an answer if your kids were a little bit older when your husband entered their
Mhm.
life. I might have a different response
Yeah.
than I do when he's been in their life for such a long time, because I think there's a way that he can feel alienated from himself as a parental figure and his ability to have a buy-in these kids' lives that he has been very invested in
Mhm.
for many, many
Yes.
years, right? And
Yes.
I think, as is always the case when we're in these spaces of difficulty finding alignment or finding eye to eye on the way that we feel about this, I always love to say that it's most helpful to attempt to meet it with curiosity
Hmm.
when we're not activated. So
Oh,
when there's just been
Keywords.
an explosion and he's just
way
gone
too
off
many
on your
keywords.
daughter, like, that is not the time to meet it with curiosity. Like, he does not wanna be curious with you, you don't wanna be curious with him, nobody's
No.
curious, we're just activated, right?
Nobody's curious. Yeah.
Um, and so at a time when it is not that,
Mhm.
I want you to, like, a little bit from the space of vulnerability, speak to
Hmm.
a little bit of what I just said, a little bit of what you expressed to Vanessa and
Yeah.
I, that, like, you have been a parental figure for these kids and loved them, and I know that, and I want you to know how grateful I am for everything that you are in their life. And I just feel like what feels important to me is really allowing my kids to feel like they are seen and heard in what their experience is, and that we care about how they feel, because the story I tell myself is that if they don't, they will pull away. They will shut down from being open with us about things. They will start to hide things because they will feel like they aren't safe telling us things like, Mom, I want to have my boyfriend in my room, whatever the thing is, right? And
Yeah.
so I really want to, like, honor what this feels like for you, but I'm wondering if you can just, like, talk to me about um like, what your fears are for her.
She'll
Like,
say
what is
fear.
the story you tell yourself about what will happen if she's in her room?
Mhm.
And what I really love to do, Michelle, is ask couples to, like, ask your husband to go on a walk or a hike wherever you live, because it's
Hmm.
like no distractions. You've got his full attention.
Yeah.
That's
And then
good. Yeah.
have this conversation about the curiosity and be like, this is something I sit with sometimes. And I like, and this is a big one. I really want to make clear that I want to honor you as my husband. I want to honor that, like, I respect your perspective here. I don't want that to be minimized. And I struggle with this because it just
Mhm.
doesn't feel that clear to me, and I don't want to be rigid with her, with them. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, could I just, well, I'm glad this is being recorded so I can play this back to myself before I have the conversation with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. And I think
Mm.
it does come from a place of fear from him.
Mhm.
He has two daughters that he raised. They're in their 30s now. And him and his ex, their big thing was, we just want them to make it through their teenage years in high school, graduate, not get pregnant and be a teen mom.
Mhm.
And that was 15, 20 years ago. And,
Yeah.
I think the kids are different in many ways, and that fear is really at the surface for him.
Mm.
Mhm.
And it comes from a place of like total sort of love and desire to
Protect.
protect. Yeah, big time protect.
Mhm.
And it's that they like that hypervigilance, that sort of awareness of like what could possibly hurt them is always at the
Mhm.
surface for him.
Mhm.
And I do admire and respect that so much. I
Mhm.
think I just I have to work on, I feel like part of it is that the longevity of the relationship is that I feel like I've been really patient and compassionate for a really long time. And
Mhm.
sometimes now when these things come to a surface, I just want to like stomp my feet and be like, they're
Mhm.
my kids. No.
Yeah.
And that's not fair because he's not some new boyfriend that just walked in the picture,
Yeah.
and the kids love and respect him. And I also think there's value in them understanding that not everyone has the same personality. And there's going to
Right.
be behaviors that they're going to have to learn to experience in other people. I can't shelter them from every bad criticism or every bad
Mhm.
temper or every, short fuse. And I think I feel like I've spent so many years like trying to do that. Like,
Mm.
it's
Mhm.
like pat here, pat here, pat here, pat here. Like, look, mommy's whole, everything's fine. And
Mm.
like everything was like on fire. And now I'm trying to sort of recalibrate and recognize that like everything's not on fire all the time. It still feels
Mm.
inside to me like things are on fire. And when
Mhm.
that moment comes where there's a criticism or a no or a like, you're being ridiculous, those kinds of comments, I immediately am like, fires, everything's on fire again.
Yeah. I
And
go
it's
right back.
sometimes not like it's
Yeah.
like I even noticed as I was like writing to you all, like I was like, the fire's coming, like I'm adding kindling to the
Mhm.
fire, it's going to blow up around me. And all day I was like, oh, I just said this thing and now it's like alive. And then
Mm.
2 days later I was like, maybe I should cancel, like everything's okay, and it's
Mhm.
so much of that is that's my work, that's my doing,
Mhm.
not his. But I have a hard time, I'm having a hard time with it.
Mhm.
Well, I also what's so interesting about that is and I think this is actually I feel in my body like this is an important takeaway for you, but also for people
Okay.
listening, which is when you are in a family dynamic where there is chaos for whatever reason, whether there's somebody that's addicted, whether there's somebody
Mhm.
who's struggling with mental health issues that become very explosive and volatile, which it sounds like there was a long period where that was the truth of the
Yeah.
dynamic, there is some secondary trauma that
Yeah.
happens. Right? We spend so much time as a unit focused on the what we would call the IP, the identified patient, right? Without
Mhm.
really realizing that like we have to tend to ourselves through the
Mm.
chaos as well. And so as you're talking about this feeling of like the fire, it's coming and I can feel it in your body and in the way you're talking and I can see your breath like up in the top of
Yeah.
your chest. I'm like, there's your trauma, girl. Like
Yeah.
it's there. It's there. And I want to kind of give that the space and the permission to be and to recognize it, right? And to also say, like, mama, while you're doing the work of being a mama and being a partner, I hope that you're also doing the work of tending to you and maybe doing some work to unpack and to go back and heal some of the trauma that's happened
Yeah.
through that chaos that was part of the relationship.
It's so true, and I think for me, the chaos when it was so chaotic, we ended up splitting up for a brief time, and in that
Mhm.
panic of of making a very split decision to end the relationship, and then the trauma of and the chaos of reconciling, I absorbed all of the blame in the relationship simply just to like get his feet back under him,
Mm.
and I didn't do anything really to care for myself in that process or process what had happened other than to take the blame. And it got to a point where it was like really difficult for me to like shower and eat and like function in my job. I mean, it overtook
Mm.
me. And then I think I just sort of assumed that time would pass and things would flare here and there, but overall we're better. And like now it's like the barometer's a little bit higher. Like I can take a shower every day and still hold down a job, but there are moments when it feels so crippling.
Yeah.
Um, and I see a look maybe even on my daughter's face, or I see my son sort of shake his head and be frustrated. And it's like I want to just like it's like I want to dive on top of them and just like put him back up in my belly. Like and I can't do that. And that's not the danger. Like that, there's no fire standing there. But it's what it feels like when I see that look on their face, and I just to know that I might be doing something that's causing that or exposing them to something is really scary to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what Vanessa's saying is so important because a lot of this is sort of recalibrating your nervous system to
Mhm.
what is happening right now and how I stay with myself in those moments of, yeah, I will say PTSD, like, in that I start to feel like the visceral response of what has happened in the past. And the thing that I want to add on to that, and I can hear Michelle in the way that you speak about your husband, that there is just so much reverence and grace for the journey and where he isn't. Like, I hear you speak to the growth, and I
Mhm.
Yeah.
think that I would imagine he is, even if it has not been said or acknowledged, carrying the shame of that time period in ways that I think it would be healing for both of you to talk about, with the same reverence. Like, I want you to know I see the journey, I see where we were and where we are now. And I realize that sometimes I may be responding to you as if that is still where we are and who you are. And I know that it's not, but I need us to be able to talk about it so that it's just not this, like, thing in the room that nobody's addressing energetically.
Mhm.
And that some of that, like, I think, it's if someone's demanding to be respected a little bit, it's because like they're fighting with their own stuff around
Mhm.
like they're like whether they are trustworthy or
Feeling
worthy of that
respectable.
respect, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like,
Yeah.
how do I support him in I feel that for you. Like, you don't have to fight for it. I respect you. I love you. And I think that there are some things that we haven't ever like talked about and done some cleanup work around that it's important for us to be in relationship with now.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think approaching it from that place of curiosity, it's funny. That seems so scary to me. When things are good, is when I feel like I tiptoe
Mm,
more, because it's like, oh, like
yeah.
if I happen to like
Keep it this way,
forget
keep it
something at
this
the
way.
grocery store, you're like, oh Jesus, that's gonna like send something over the edge, like. And there's no evidence. I mean, there's no.
I love.
I have like enough sort of like intellectual awareness about it. Like, there's no evidence that that's what's gonna happen. Um, but it's so right there under the surface in so many ways, that all the ways that I try to, I switch jobs and I go to CrossFit and I take my shower and I, put makeup on every day and I make a healthy
Mm,
meal. Like I'm checking the box and it's like not getting deeper. Like I want it either gone out of me or like so far suppressed that it's like, and so I feel like I'm in this constant
mhm,
balance of like, it's just not moving forward or back. It's just sort of like hanging over me like a cloud.
mm,
Ugh.
Can I just jump in quickly? I just want you said, I want you to do some offensive communication
mhm,
around what
mhm,
you just said. I want you to describe that to him. I
mhm.
want
I
you
do
to say,
too.
like,
Okay.
as much as I know this is not the case, I find myself sometimes in that space of, I want you to bring him in on that with
Mhm,
zero
Okay.
shame. But this is sometimes what I still find myself in sort of like a response to. And I want us to talk about it so that I'm not like really carrying it alone, Michelle, because right now
Yeah.
you are. You're
mhm,
Yeah.
carrying it as the thing that we can't talk about, and it becomes the boulder that I want to invite you to put down.
Yeah.
That you don't have to carry by yourself. This is the point of having a partner, that
mhm,
you
Yeah.
guys are in partnership around healing some of what's been hurt in the past. But we can hold more than one truth at the same time, that is not where we are and who he is and what our relationship dynamic is anymore.
Yeah.
And I still find sometimes that I'm in that contracted state,
mhm.
especially when things are good. And I
Mm.
don't want to feel that, you know?
I can feel that even listening to you say it, like I can feel sort of relief in the air if I could just get that out. Because I do think that it would be responded to well. I don't think that
Mhm,
that would be something that he would. I mean, there may be a little, I, but I'm focusing on all these other peripheral things, like
mhm,
getting his buy-in on my daughter having a boyfriend in the room. That's not what this is about. Like, and I think that's what I realize now
mhm,
is it's not really about the transactional stuff that
mhm,
happens in parenting. It's
mm,
this, it's fear. It's fear on my part too. And for so long, I've just been like, nope, he's the one with the fear. I'm fine.
mhm.
And
Well, and I also think what you're saying, what's so important is like, yes, of course, there's the very real things that are happening around the parenting dynamic, but that almost feels like a symptom of it's a symptom of we've been kind of both operating from this place of fear and we actually haven't done the repair work, like Danae said.
right,
And so to a certain extent, like y'all have like hit almost like a glass ceiling when it comes to being like intimate and vulnerable with each other. You know what I mean? And we're operating at this level, but we're not really getting like deeper, you know?
exactly.
We're pretending and there's inauthenticity in that. And there's like a little bit of ego in that. And there's a protection of
Hmm.
self in that. And so all of that is coloring then the very real, very normal, hard conversations that everyone has to have in their relationships, right?
Yeah.
It's like everybody listening can totally feel like, oh, yeah, the parenting conversations are hard. That would be hard for anybody. But you are coming in with this extra hard because you guys are operating at a base level that has so much stuff that hasn't really been healed, right? Or brought to the surface. And so I
Hmm.
think what you're saying is so on point. It's like, oh shit, I think I actually have to go back a little bit and start there and do the healing work that's actually required, by the way, for you.
Right.
Because even when it comes to our children, the most important work we can actually do sometimes is around healing ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And instead of putting them at the forefront and doing our best to be like, it's all about them and how do I parent them and protect them? It's like, no, actually, for their sake, it's good that I do this for me because that's what they're going to see. They're going to see, they're going to learn how to be with themselves in hard situations by how I am with myself in hard
So true.
situations.
So true.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a real challenge, and that's the kind of stuff that I start to see in my kids. My son
Yeah.
particularly is like very protective of me and like
Mm,
very doesn't want anybody to be upset, and like I'm like,
mm,
oh shit, like I have like completely just manifested that complex that I've always had for him. And you know, they've seen me do hard things, and I'm honest with them about how, you know, through the challenge, some of the challenges, at like age appropriate ways, but like, you know, this is this is what we're managing. And I think it would be, I feel like I'm so focused on the other people that I'm not focused on myself at all. In this kind of healing way, you know, I go to therapy, I check the boxes, but I really haven't done any of that work to approach this situation vulnerably about sort of the larger repair that needs to happen in the relationship.
Mm. There's something I just want
Mm.
to reflect to you, Michelle. There is a tremendous amount of wisdom in the way that you speak to things. You are wise.
Mm.
And I think that
Thank you.
whatever it is that you have waded through over this time has cultivated that within you. I want to really invite you to trust yourself.
Thank you.
And I think that when you get still and you sort of ask that still small voice within, how do I want to speak to this? I think you have so many answers. I can just tell from the way that you understand and integrate what you're speaking to in your experience. So,
Thank you.
just my way of
Thank you.
saying, like,
No, that's
your
wonderful.
wisdom
Thank
is
you.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
write it down, you know? Like, let's be pragmatic about this. Like,
Yep.
write it down. Do some real, like, dump it all out. Let it be messy and not clear and maybe a little harsh at times, maybe a little
Yeah.
like throw some fuck yous in there if that's what feels good,
Yep.
you know.
That feels
And then
good
you
sometimes.
and,
Yeah.
and then you go back through it, you know, and you
Yeah.
kind of reread it and you say,
Mm.
okay, like what is it that I actually want to bring to the table and communicate? And how can I make sure this is coming through the lens of curiosity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is such a valuable exercise to do when we're ready to have these conversations. And, you know, I say this all the time, like, no shame in my game. I bring in notes to
Yeah.
conversations all the time, right? Bullet
Yeah.
1, bullet
Yeah.
2, you know, because there's emotion and you love him and you might get
Yeah.
sidetracked
Very
and
much.
you're
Yeah.
like, no, I want to communicate these things as compassionately as I can, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. This is just, I needed the reframe, and I feel like I have some things to think about to get me to move toward past this sort of stuck feeling. And I think it's like,
Mhm.
it is that glass ceiling because I can see on the other end of it. It's like, we've been
Yes.
through a whole fucking mess of a lot. Like, and the other side of that glass is goodness. And it's just,
Mm.
it's like there. And I think that's been the hard part. It's like, it's there, and I just have been unable to like get it. And this
And
feels like
I
it
would
might bring me there.
I would even say too that like the fear on your side around even getting to that is a little bit of like that a lot of us do, which is like I'm afraid of the good because then what if the good goes away,
Big time.
you
Yeah.
know? And so there might
That's
be
definitely
something
there.
with that
Yeah.
fear as well, you know,
There's
like
definitely that
allowing
there
my
too.
because it's more vulnerable to be in joy and in pleasure than it actually is to be in the fear and the discomfort, right? Because it's
Yeah.
scarier for us to think about it going away. So sit with that
Agreed.
too, you know? Mm.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think this is going to be really helpful. And so I appreciate you, you know, offering it,
No,
offering it for
happy
people.
to, and thank you so much for everything. Honestly, I get so much from you guys all the time, and this is a real special thing for me. So thank you.
Good.
Mm.
Keep us
Thank you so
posted.
much, love.
Thank you so
Okay. And
much.
let us know
Okay.
how things are
All
going.
right. I will.
Mm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, love.
Bye.
Bye.